I'm Emily, and for years my successful brother Michael judged every choice I made. At every family dinner, he'd dismiss me, saying, "She's always looking for work. She'll never find her path." Hearing the family laugh cut me to the bone. He humiliated me for choosing purpose over profit, for building a simple medical device he called a cheap hobby. Many of us have been told, our purpose isn't good enough, but I promise you the truth always defends the dreamer. What happens when the little box they mocked is the very tool that exposes the huge toxic fraud Michael was desperately hiding? Get ready. Because justice always finds its way back to the dinner table. I was accustomed to these kinds of family dinners, but tonight the atmosphere felt particularly heavy from the moment I walked through the door. My parents' home in suburban Austin looked exactly as it always did, the scent of roasted chicken, the warm yellow light cast over the long dining table, the clinking of wine glasses as they raised them in celebration. The problem was never the meal. The problem was always the people seated around that table. I took the chair directly across from my brother Michael, the old wooden frame groaning slightly beneath me. He was in his tailored gray suit, the tie meticulously knotted, wearing that permanent self-satisfied smirk that never quite left his face. I, on the other hand, was wearing simple jeans and a button-down shirt. Nothing to prove except myself. And that in my family's eyes equated to nothing at all. "What kept you busy today, Emily?" My mother finally piped up an attempt at maternal concern that was laced with unmistakable scrutiny. Before I could even open my mouth, Michael leaned back in his chair, lifted his wine glass, and let out a bright, booming laugh. "Oh, Mom, come on. We all know Emily is still looking for work. She will always be the one looking for work. Never quite capable of finding her footing, is she?" The clatter of silverware stopped. A brief, charged silence hung over the table before it broke into a nervous chorus of titters and agreement. A few relatives nodded curtly. Others avoided my gaze, but their collective silence was a resounding endorsement of my brother's assessment. I sat there feeling the heat rise in my cheeks, but I said nothing. I was well practiced in this performance. For years, Michael had been the family's pride, the bank vice president, the luxury car, the sprawling house, and the inherent ability to parade his achievements before every available relative. And me. A tiny apartment in San Francisco, an aging Honda, and a job they believed was not truly real. My father cleared his throat, a weak effort to interrupt the tension, but not courageous enough to actually defend me. My mother offered my brother another careful pour of Cabernet, her smile strained. "Emily," my Aunt Claire interjected, her voice sharp and brittle as dry leaves. "You're 32 now. It's time to settle down. Michael at your age had both a career and a family. And you?" She let the sentence hang, the disappointment in her eyes finishing the thought. The new form of humiliation wasn't a slap or a raised voice. It was the slow, steady drip of public comparison, the casual dismantling of my worth in front of people who were meant to care. I drew a deep, steadying breath, fighting to keep my expression neutral. A flash of memory crossed my mind, the late nights in that cramped San Francisco garage. Mark and I hunched over prototypes, soldering circuits fueled by cheap coffee. It wasn't about money then. It was about Grandma Evelyn, who almost lost her life because she couldn't remember to take her medication on time. It was a purpose, a mission. But no one here knew that narrative. No one here could connect the failure they saw to the fire I felt. Michael set his glass down, tapping a rhythmic beat on the mahogany table. "Emily, I really think you should reconsider. You're smart, yes, but intelligence not applied to anything meaningful is just potential wasted. You need a real job, a steady job, not this abstract project you keep talking about." I swallowed slowly, maintaining my silence. Every eye at the table was on me. Part of me yearned to yell, to throw out the figures, the contracts, the acquisition offers that I knew would stun them into absolute quiet. But another part, the deep strategic part of me, wanted to wait. I wanted the truth to reveal itself on my own terms at the moment of maximum impact. I picked up my fork deliberately, spearing a piece of chicken on my plate, feigning indifference. I didn't need to prove myself right now. Not to them. Not tonight. As the discussion shifted back to Michael's recent promotion and the new boat he was considering, a sudden, unexpected silence fell over the room. I looked up and caught the eye of Uncle David, my father's quiet, reserved brother, who usually only observed. He was staring at me intently, his eyes narrowed as if attempting to piece together a fragmented image in his mind. A strange jolt went through me. No one else noticed, but Uncle David was not smiling. He wasn't looking at me like a failure either. He was looking at me as if he had seen me somewhere before, perhaps on a news site. Maybe a financial magazine cover somewhere that didn't fit the narrative Michael was so expertly crafting. The hand holding his wineglass trembled slightly. I felt the tension tighten, realizing he was close to breaking the familiar script this family had been acting out for years. He was about to speak, about to disrupt the evening. Uncle David's gaze from the previous night was a tight knot in my memory, a lingering presence that followed me. He looked at me as if he knew the enormous secret I carried. If they all knew, truly knew what I had accomplished, perhaps no one in that dining room would dare to laugh again. I often traced the path that led me from the certainty of a finance career back to this unpredictable life. I grew up in a family where achievement was the only currency. Michael was the golden boy. He went from high school basketball star to an Ivy League degree to investment banking. The accolades never stopped. Michael is the pride of our lineage. I was simply Emily, the girl who preferred taking apart old radios, burying her nose in a computer instead of attending parties, and was constantly labeled as not outgoing, lacking clear direction. For years, I attempted to prove myself on their terms. I studied finance, landed a job at a prestigious San Francisco bank, and earned a six-figure salary. On the surface, I was the definition of success. But internally, I was a vacuum. During late evenings in my high-rise office, I would look down at the city lights and ask myself, is this all there is to my life? The year 2015 brought a shattering turning point. My grandma Evelyn, the woman who had raised me with wrinkled hands and unwavering love, nearly died after forgetting to take her blood pressure medication for 3 consecutive days. The memory of that night is etched in acid. She collapsed right in the living room. We rushed her to the emergency room, her life hanging by a fragile thread. I stood outside the intensive care unit, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Michael frantically called a doctor friend, projecting an air of decisive control. My parents retreated into quiet prayer. But I saw only one cold, hard reality. Her death could have been caused by a simple, overlooked detail: forgetting a pill. She was fortunate to survive. But the old Emily did not. I felt the shattering realization that I was done waiting for permission. The very next day, I began devouring every piece of documentation I could find on medical technology and artificial intelligence. The idea sparked to life. What if a smart device could not only remind her to take medicine, but also actively monitor her health? I worked through several sleepless nights sketching ideas and writing draft proposals. When I shared the concept with Michael, he scoffed and burst into laughter. A smart pill organizer, Emily. That sounds like a cheap gadget advertised at 2 a.m. Don't be ridiculous. Stick with the bank. That's what a real career looks like. That sentence became a fresh, deep wound. But it also became fuel. And medical technology is not for you. This was the new form of humiliation, the profound emotional rejection of my core purpose, seeing my calculated risk as nothing more than foolish recklessness. Only one person believed in the fire I carried: Mark, my best friend from college. Mark was an electronics engineer, having worked briefly for a medical device company. When I told him about the AI pillbox idea, his eyes lit up with genuine excitement. Emily, if you're serious, I'm in. We can start in my garage. And so we began. That small San Francisco garage became our cramped, chaotic laboratory. The walls were soon covered in circuit diagrams, the tables piled high with components. We survived on cold, stale pizza and cheap coffee, working until exhaustion claimed us. The device failed repeatedly. Boards burned out, batteries died. The AI system gave false alerts. Yet each setback only hardened my resolve. Late at night, after Mark had finally crashed, I often sat alone staring at the first pillbox prototype, a crude plastic shell with a small screen, and whispering, "Grandma, I will do this. I won't let anyone else face the terror of losing a loved one over a forgotten dose." We survived on dwindling savings and pure faith. I sold my car and moved into a tiny shared apartment to conserve the rent money. Michael learned of my new circumstances and mocked me. "You gave up 6 figures to live like a poor student." How completely absurd. But I ceased caring about his judgment. Every soldered joint, every line of code brought me closer to the vision. A year later, the MedTrack AI pillbox prototype was working flawlessly. It didn't just issue audio and light reminders. Its embedded AI learned user behavior and flagged dangerous irregularities like rapid heartbeat, hand tremors, or voice changes. It was a tiny device, but I was convinced it could save countless lives. The only remaining obstacle was gaining credibility. Who would take a garage startup seriously? I clearly remember the day we brought the prototype to a local hospital for a trial. Dr. Rachel Green, a contact of Mark's, agreed to use it with a small cohort of elderly patients. I held my breath waiting for the data. Within a single month, the results showed that the pillbox not only ensured adherence but also helped detect 3 cases of cardiovascular risk. All 3 patients received timely interventions. Rachel looked at me, her expression one of utter respect. "Emily, this could reshape the industry." That night I returned to my crowded apartment and stared at the glowing prototype. I knew I was on the correct path. But I also knew the road ahead was filled with people like Michael, ready to mock, ready to doubt, right up until the point where the undeniable evidence shattered their certainty. And the look in Uncle David's eyes just might mean that moment was closer than I ever imagined. It is a harsh truth, learned by every entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. It doesn't matter how brilliant you believe your idea is. If you fail to make others believe in you, you are nothing. I walked into the gleaming minimalist conference room in downtown San Francisco, the pillbox prototype gripped in my hand, my heart pounding a steady, anxious rhythm. This was my biggest pitching opportunity yet. Seated across the long table were 5 venture capitalists, people who could inject millions of dollars into a concept with a single nod. I launched into the presentation displaying the trial data, the grateful letters from patients, the genuine lives saved by the device. I spoke about my grandma Evelyn. I spoke about the deep-seated reason for every sacrifice I had made. When I finished, a charged silence settled over the room. I waited, hopeful. But then one of them, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, leaned back in his chair and let out a small, condescending chuckle. "Emily, the idea is quaint," he drawled. "But the medical device market is brutal. The major corporations dominate. Do you really believe a garage startup can compete? Be realistic. You're smart. You have a finance background. Go back to the bank before it's too late." This was the new form of humiliation, the casual, arrogant dismissal of my entire mission by powerful strangers. The insistence that I was wasting valuable time attempting something cute but unprofitable. The others nodded in agreement. A younger woman was more careful with her words, yet delivered the same rejection. "The product has wonderful social value. But I don't see the massive, explosive profit we require. We invest in unicorns, not charity." The heavy mahogany door shut behind me. I stood in the quiet hallway, the prototype suddenly feeling like a worthless stone in my hand. My entire body trembled with a mixture of anger and crushing disappointment. They didn't understand the mission. They didn't see that the figures on paper were only a fraction of the story. They didn't see the relief in a patient's eyes when they realized they were safe. That evening I called Mark. Maybe Michael was right. I admitted, the words tasting like ash. Maybe this is just a childish fantasy. Mark remained silent for a few heavy seconds before his voice came back firm and absolute. "Emily, I've seen countless pointless products get millions in funding just based on hype. But this pillbox, it has saved real people. If you quit, who is going to build it? Those VCs, no. We keep going, with or without their cash." I gazed around the cluttered garage at the tangles of wires and the whiteboard covered in formulas. Part of me was so exhausted I wanted to surrender. But the other part, the one connected to the vivid image of my grandmother on that hospital bed, refused to let me stop. Then an unexpected breakthrough arrived. Rachel Green, the doctor at the local hospital, called me directly. "Emily, the elderly patient group we ran trials with are showing amazing progress. The hospital board wants to expand the pilot program. I need 50 more devices. I nearly dropped the phone. 50 devices. To us, that felt like scaling a mountain. But it was also undeniable, tangible proof that the product worked. We plunged back into work, sleeping in short, sporadic bursts. A small team of recent engineering graduates willing to accept low pay in exchange for equity shares joined our ranks. I looked at them sometimes, wondering how could they trust me so implicitly when my own family viewed me as a spectacular failure. The answer came late one night while we were testing circuit boards. A young engineer named Olivia looked up, her expression sincere. "Emily, I turned down 3 high-paying offers to be here. I don't need anyone else to be right about me because I believe in you." Her simple statement was a powerful, emotional blow. I thought of the mocking laughter in the conference room, Michael's incessant ridicule. I finally understood that this kind of faith was worth more than any capital injection. But not everyone was ready to believe. A week later, I received an invitation to a major medical technology conference, an opportunity to present before leaders of giant corporations. I took the stage, projected my slides, and told the core story. The audience was attentive. But as I stepped down, a tall, imposing man with graying hair approached me. I recognized him instantly, Charles Whitman, the CEO of one of the nation's largest pharmaceutical conglomerates. He shook my hand, his grip overly tight, his smile predatory. "Ms. Carter, the product truly is charming. But take some professional advice. Don't waste your prime years. Companies like ours will crush a nascent startup like yours underfoot. A smart person knows when to retreat." I looked directly into his eyes, refusing to flinch. "Or a smart person knows when to fight." He let out a loud, booming laugh, patted my shoulder, and walked away. But the blatant threat lingered in the air, cold and calculated. That night I found no sleep. I thought about the laughing investors, about Whitman, about Michael. All of them were certain of my defeat. But as I looked at the glowing prototype, I remembered my grandmother, the trusting eyes of Olivia, and Mark's resolute voice. They may not believe in me, but I will continue. And one day, they would be unable to ignore the truth. My phone vibrated sharply. An email notification, a subject line from a Forbes reporter: "We've heard about MedTrack AI. We need an interview. We believe your story could change how people view elder care." I sat still, the email illuminating my face. My heart hammered against my ribs. This could be the break. Or it could be the start of the biggest battle yet. The email from Forbes still rested in my inbox unanswered. I knew accepting it would throw my story into the relentless public glare. But I also knew for the startup to thrive, I needed more than recognition. I needed absolute conviction. In the ensuing weeks, we expanded the trial. Rachel provided us with a list of elderly patients. Mark and I drove our beat-up van, delivering the pill boxes, meticulously recording the data. This wasn't just about numbers. It was about human contact. I remember one afternoon visiting Mrs. Johnson, 78, battling diabetes and high blood pressure. Her son met me, his face tight with stress. She forgets her medication constantly. We live in fear. I installed the pill box. Mrs. Johnson touched the small bright screen and smiled. "This thing reminds me like a kind friend." "Thank you." I left that apartment feeling an unshakable certainty. Weeks later, a shaky handwritten letter arrived at our tiny office. The script was frail but clear. "Ms. Carter, your pill box saved my husband's life. His heart rate spiked, the device caught the abnormality, and we got him to the ER in time. The doctor said another hour and he wouldn't have made it. Thank you for giving us more time together." I held the paper, tears blurring the text. Mark gripped my shoulder. "Emily, this is the reason." But conviction didn't pay the bills, and the ridicule still persisted. I returned to Austin for a brief dinner with my family. Michael, seated at the head of the table, droned on about a bank merger he was quarterbacking. He spoke of extravagant client parties and the new house he was buying. Then his eyes landed on me. "Still playing with that little box, Emily?" He laughed, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Be realistic. Even if you sell a few, it's not a career. It's a hobby. I, on the other hand, am building a real future. My mother nodded, adding, Michael is right. You need stability. You are not getting any younger. I wanted to slam the patient's letter onto the table. I wanted to scream that while Michael dealt in meaningless paper numbers, I had saved a real person's life. But I swallowed the impulse. I'm fine, Mom. I know exactly what I'm doing. My father sat silent, avoiding my gaze. The meal dragged on thick with unspoken judgment. I focused on the cold weight of the silverware in my hand, tuning out the noise. Yet deep in my pocket, my phone vibrated insistently silent dispatches, confirming system data updates, new patient alerts, warnings sent out just in time. I smiled internally, knowing what they called a hobby was quietly becoming more vital than any of Michael's mergers. Before leaving, my father's voice was barely a whisper. Emily, are you sure you're not making a mistake? I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze firm. I have never been more certain in my life, Dad. As I walked out, the vast Texas night embraced me. I knew the path was still hard, still fraught with my family's doubt. But in my hand, the certainty of that life-saving pillbox glowed brighter than any city light. The first true pulse of hope had arrived. The family dinners were always defined by a specific scent red wine, slow-cooked sauce, and the old wood of the three-generation dining table. But on this particular evening, the air was unusually charged thick with the unspoken knowledge that my life and Michael's was teetering on a precarious edge. Michael arrived wearing the impeccably tailored navy suit, but the usual swagger seemed notably strained and anxious. He placed his new BMW keys conspicuously on the table. This car handles stress well, he announced, the smile not quite reaching his eyes. My clients are impressed. They asked me how a banker my age manages such consistent success. I told them calculated risk. Aunt Martha nodded furiously. Michael is truly the pride of our lineage. A clear, solid career path, the kind people dream of. Then he turned his attention to me, the calculated concern back in his voice. Emily, are you still playing with that box? Cell 510. You need to be serious. I, on the other hand, am about to close a merger that will rewrite my bank's history. The table buzzed. My father leaned forward, eyes gleaming with anxious hope. Which merger is that, Michael? My bank is finalizing a deal with a massive New York institution. The stock is set to skyrocket. This is my legacy. He stated, his voice a little too loud. Desperately. Waiting for the validation he now seemed to need more than ever. And the praise came. Aunt, uncle, even my grandparents, one by one raising their glasses. We are so proud. You truly are the shining star. I bit my tongue, the familiar feeling of being minimized washing over me. They saw the vest, the keys, the promise of wealth. They didn't see the sweat equity, the saved lives, or the frantic market pressure Michael was actually hiding. My father sighed, looking directly at me. Emily, I don't mean to hurt you, but you see the difference. The path Michael chose gives him stability. And you? He stopped, smiling sadly. You're still living precariously in a tiny California apartment. I only want what is best. An invisible knife twisted in my gut. But I did not react. I simply focused on my plate. The voice in my head firm. They think they are protecting me. They are really just afraid to believe in me. After dinner, I stepped out onto the porch, taking a deep restorative breath. The Texas air was thick with the smell of damp earth after a light rain. I was preparing to leave when I heard two relatives talking softly inside the living room. I heard the news about Michael's merger having serious issues, a low male voice murmured. What kind of issues? A woman's voice replied, worried. The institution they're acquiring, it's concealing a massive amount of toxic debt. If that information leaks before closing, the stock will crash. Michael will be in deep trouble. My calm shattered. I stood frozen in the dark, my heart pounding with a mixture of shock and bitter irony. The entire table had just hailed my brother as the savior of our lineage. Yet beneath that glittering facade, everything was ready to fracture. I smiled to myself, a cold, calculated expression. They had no idea. And I knew the truth, the stability they revered, might soon prove to be nothing more than a castle built on quickly shifting sands. After that strained dinner, I returned to San Francisco carrying a strange mix of pain and peculiar satisfaction. My family still saw Michael as the rising star, and me as the dreamy younger sister. But I possessed a truth they didn't. Michael's fortress was already fracturing from within. I didn't have much time to dwell on my brother's impending crisis, because a different kind of storm was gathering over MedTrack AI. Monday morning, the moment I walked into our tiny MedTrack AI office, I saw Mark and Olivia standing near the conference table, their faces pale. In the center of the table lay a thick envelope stamped with the imposing logo of one of the nation's largest pharmaceutical conglomerates. I tore the envelope open. Pages of dense legal text immediately assaulted my vision. Cease and desist. They accused MedTrack AI of patent infringement, encroaching upon their exclusive domain, and threatened immediate legal action if we did not halt all production and distribution. I sank into the nearest chair, my hands trembling slightly. This was the true face of corporate power. Their move wasn't because our product was useless, but because it actively threatened their colossal profits. A small, inexpensive device that could reduce the costly dependency on their long-term care services was a direct attack on their revenue model. Mark slammed his fist onto the table. "We just got started. They're trying to strangle us in the cradle." Olivia wrung her hands, worried. "If we have to go to court, where will we get the funds to fight? A single day of lawyer fees will wipe out our entire budget for the month." I felt a cold, familiar knot tighten in my stomach. The painful memories resurfaced, Michael calling me a dreamer, my mother saying I was ruining my future. Were they right? Was I leading this small, dedicated team to an inevitable, financially crushing dead end? My phone buzzed sharply. I looked down. It was Michael. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was loud, laced with cruel mockery. I heard the news. "Your little startup is being sued." I guessed that would happen sooner or later. "Do you really think you can fight Big Pharma, Emily? Be real? You don't stand a chance." This was the new digital form of humiliation, leveraging my public misfortune to deliver a final crushing judgment over the phone. I paused, allowing the silence to stretch, then responded with deliberate flatness. "You might be surprised." And I hung up before he could utter another word. But after replacing the phone, I was truly shaking. Michael didn't need to know that underneath my calm exterior, fear was screaming. We immediately called an emergency team meeting. I stood before the whiteboard, marker in hand, facing their worried, expectant faces. "I won't lie," I began. "Big Pharma wants to crush us. They have the money, the lawyers, the power. We have nothing but an idea, and a few thousand units already sold. But," I stopped, my voice firming with resolve, "we possess one thing they will never have: the truth that this product saves lives. And that I promise you is worth fighting for." Olivia raised her hand, her eyes blazing with conviction. "I'm staying. I gave up a massive salary to take shares here. I will not run away now." Mark nodded emphatically. "Me neither." One by one, the others in the room, 2 then 3, raised their hands. I looked around, my heart surging with fierce gratitude. They believed in me. They believed in the pillbox. I took a deep, steadying breath. "Okay, we find a lawyer. We fight this. And if we fall, at least we fall for a reason that truly matters." The air was heavy with anxiety, yet electrified by shared purpose. That evening I returned to my cramped apartment, collapsing onto the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling. Everything swirled in my mind. Michael, the lawsuit, the imminent threat of bankruptcy. I was perched precariously on the razor-thin edge between a magnificent breakthrough and total ruin. The chime of an incoming email cut through the silence. I almost ignored it, but the sender's name made me bolt upright. Forbes editorial office. "We have heard about MedTrack AI and your incredible founding story. We'd like to schedule an interview and consider you for our upcoming 30 Under 30 feature. This could be a defining moment." I read the message repeatedly, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I started laughing, a shaky, breathless sound, half hysteria, half triumph. In the daytime, Big Pharma was trying to obliterate me. In the dead of night, Forbes was offering validation. I stared at the pillbox on my coffee table, its small green light pulsing steadily in the darkness. Michael's voice echoed in my memory. "Emily, you'll always be looking for work." My mother's voice, the voices of my entire doubting family. I whispered my answer into the quiet apartment no. I have already found it. The magazine hit the stands on a Thursday morning. My phone began vibrating nonstop on the nightstand, texts, calls, emails crashing in from every direction. I rubbed my eyes and reached for the nearest notification. There it was in sharp digital clarity, my face splashed across the cover of Forbes. The headline bold and impossible to ignore: Emily Carter, the CEO, revolutionizing senior care. Inside, a 12-page feature detailed the journey from a garage startup to a valuation that now touched billions. The article speculated about our IPO, calling it one of the most anticipated offerings in the healthcare tech sector. For a long moment, I just stared at that image, my face, my name. Then I remembered the late nights the soldier burns the ridicule. It felt more real than anything ever had. Mark burst in, waving a paper copy like it was a golden ticket. "Emily, we are the game." But as exhilarating as it was, I knew where I needed to be that evening. At my parents' dinner table, sitting across from Michael. The atmosphere was visibly charged that night, the air itself humming with anticipation. I walked in holding a quiet smile. Michael was already seated holding court as he described the complex but brilliant merger he was leading. Then Uncle David, who rarely spoke, slowly raised his glass but didn't drink. His eyes were locked on me, sharp and unblinking. "Emily," he said, his voice low but clear enough to cut through the chatter. "I think I saw you somewhere today." Michael chuckled, rolling his eyes. "Oh, David, don't start. Emily's been experimenting." But Uncle David ignored him. He leaned forward, squinting as though confirming a suspicion. "No, I know what I saw. This morning. Forbes magazine." The table froze into silence. Forks hung midair. David set his glass down, his hand trembling slightly. "Emily Carter, CEO of MedTrack AI. That was her on the cover." He slid the paper copy he had brought across the polished wood until it landed directly in front of Michael. The glossy page reflected the chandelier's light. My face, larger than life, stared back at the entire Carter family. All at once, Michael's fork slipped from his hand, clattering loudly against the china. The sharp metallic sound reverberated through the dining room like a gunshot. His smirk dissolved into a strained, twitching grimace. Mom gasped audibly. My father looked from me to the magazine, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Michael's lips moved soundlessly. His cheeks flushed a deep, painful red. "Well," I finally said, my voice calm but carrying the weight of years of silence. "Now you know what I've been working on." The ensuing silence was absolute. Michael's hand hovered over the magazine as if it might burn him. He muttered, This doesn't mean anything. It's just press fluff." But his voice cracked, betraying him completely. For the first time in years, no one nodded in agreement. They all just stared at me, really stared, as though seeing me for the very first time. Uncle David broke the silence. His voice was steady, reverent almost. "Emily, you've done something extraordinary." And in that instant I felt the tectonic shift in the room. The pedestal Michael had stood on for decades crumbled, replaced by something no one could deny. The battle wasn't over, but the war had just turned. After the article in Forbes was published, the atmosphere within the family had never been so quiet. The relatives who had once laughed at my hobby were now awkwardly avoiding eye contact. Michael left the dinner table early, unable to bear the idea that his useless sister was now being lauded by a major financial publication. But that was only the beginning. Outside the confines of my parents' house, the world was shifting. The cramped MedTrack AI office suddenly became a vibrant hub. After the Forbes feature, investors were clamoring and emails piled high. But I had not forgotten the people who had stood by me since the start, the small team who accepted shares instead of stable salaries. One morning, I called the entire team together. We have been through the cold garage, surviving on cheap pizza and unwavering belief. Now is the time for you to receive the reward of that conviction. I brought up the slide. We are on track for an initial public offering in early next year, and every single person in this room is now a shareholder. The office exploded with cheers. Olivia burst into tears and hugged me tightly. Emily. I thought I was foolish to turn down that high-paying offer. It turns out this was the smartest decision of my life. I smiled. That feeling, watching my employees realize they were becoming financially secure not through luck, but through shared conviction, was more valuable than any bank balance. But while we celebrated our ascent, the inevitable storm on Michael's side was beginning to make landfall. The news finally leaked the bank he worked for was attempting to acquire a debt-laden institution. Analysts issued strong warnings. The stock price began to plummet, falling precipitously. In less than a week, its market value evaporated by 40%. CNBC ran a constant loop First Capital Bank merger in crisis. Senior leadership under pressure. On the screen was the logo of the banking firm where Michael served as vice president. I sat on my sofa watching the broadcast, feeling a confusing blend of pity and the powerful satisfaction of witnessing karma unfold. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was thin and shaky. Emily, did you hear about Michael's bank? I did, Mom. The whole country is talking about it. Your brother? He isn't eating, he hasn't slept. We're so worried. I closed my eyes, forcing my voice to remain calm and neutral. Mom, I told you, the stable path everyone believed in isn't always stable. The next day, I had a chance unintended encounter with Michael in Austin. He was unrecognizable. The arrogance was gone. His expensive suit was crumpled, his tie was loose. His face was strained and drawn, his eyes bloodshot. He strode quickly toward me in the parking garage. Emily, you think you're a genius now, don't you? What is one little Forbes article? I am in the middle of a massive deal. I will turn this around. I met his frantic gaze, my voice steady and measured. Michael, your bank stock has lost nearly half its value. Are you really turning it around, or are you just clinging to the wreckage? He clenched his jaw, his fists tightening, but he couldn't form a coherent response. I walked away, my relief mingling with a subtle ache. This was my brother, the one who had been placed on a pedestal by the entire family. And now he was falling while I, the one they had called unemployable, was soaring. That evening when I opened my email, hundreds of congratulatory messages flooded the screen from employees, investors, and patients. One of them included a picture of an elderly man, his hands trembling slightly as he held the pillbox, a genuine, radiant smile on his face. Thank you, Ms. Carter. You gave me more time with my granddaughter. While somewhere else, Michael was certainly staring at the CNBC ticker tape, flashing a furious red, probably wondering why everything he had built was crumbling so swiftly. And I whispered to myself, karma has officially begun its work. The silence that followed Michael's frantic exit last week haunted me. For years, every family meal had ended with him basking in applause. But that night, his prestige was fractured, and for the first time, I felt the internal power shift. That weekend, my mother called me back to Austin. The family needs to talk, she insisted. Her voice was laced with a strange mixture of pleading and genuine exhaustion. I knew this evening would be unlike any dinner before. The family had seen my face on Forbes, heard the whispers of the IPO, and absorbed the shocking news about Michael's bank troubles. My family was standing at a breaking point. When I walked in, the air was heavy with confrontation. Michael was already there, his dress shirt wrinkled, his tie carelessly askew. Beside him, my father still clung to his last threads of hope for his son. My mother, however, rushed over and embraced me, the hug so tight it startled me. Emily, I've read it all. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Her voice was ragged, as if she were finally shedding months of denial. Michael shot her a cold, withering look. Mother, you're too easily manipulated. That's just media hype. What is a few $1,000,000 for a tiny startup, really? I sat down, holding my composure. Michael, my IPO is nearing. My colleagues are soon to be millionaires from their shares. What about your bank brother? He slammed his palm down, his composure shattering. That's just a setback, I will fix it. You think a few million makes you great? My father intervened, his voice strained and authoritarian. That is enough. Michael, you are clearly stressed. Emily, you are too. This is a family, not a battlefield for assets. I looked at him, my heart aching. Dad, I never wanted assets. I only wanted to be seen as more than the child still looking for work. Mom placed her hand on mine, her eyes sharp with resolve as she looked at my father. Frank, don't you see? She accomplished something profound. We failed her by not believing. Michael sneered, his voice laced with pure venom. Mother, you are being manipulated. She always plays the victim card for sympathy and uses her sob story to divide us. I turned to him, my voice colder than steel, hitting back with the facts he couldn't deny. You call saving thousands of lives playing the victim. When I stood up against Big Pharma while you were hiding toxic debt from your board. No, Michael. The only one putting on a dangerous act here is you. The room plunged into silence. My father looked down at his plate. Mom squeezed my hand, and Michael, his face bright red, could only grind his teeth in defeated rage. Distant Aunt Martha, Michael's loyalist, spoke up, her voice surprisingly soft and uncertain. I think we owe Emily an apology. It is truly time to reassess our judgment. The table broke into a visible schism, silent, tense nods on one side, stony refusal on the other. Michael, utterly cornered, chose the only defense he had left: fury. He stood up, knocking his chair over with a jarring crash. Fine. The whole family can choose sides, but when the merger succeeds, when I prove I'm the only winner, don't come back begging me for anything. He stormed out the door, leaving behind him a devastating, tangible silence. I remained seated, caught between two opposing gazes, my mother and a few relatives' eyes shining with fierce pride, and my father and the others still battling with their ingrained doubt. For the first time, I understood clearly my family was no longer a unified front. They had formally chosen their sides, and the true final battle was only just beginning. The silence that followed Michael's frantic exit last week haunted me long after. For years, every family meal had ended with him basking in applause. But that night, his prestige was fractured, and for the first time I felt the internal power shift. That weekend, my mother called me back to Austin. The family needs to talk, she insisted. Her voice was laced with a strange mixture of pleading and genuine exhaustion. I knew this evening would be unlike any dinner before. The family had seen my face on Forbes, heard the whispers of the IPO, and absorbed the shocking news about Michael's bank troubles. My family was standing at a breaking point. When I walked in, the air was heavy with confrontation. Michael was already there, his dress shirt wrinkled, his tie carelessly askew. Beside him, my father still clung to his last threads of hope for his son. My mother, however, rushed over and embraced me, the hug so tight it startled me. Emily, I've read it all. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Her voice was ragged, as if she were finally shedding months of denial. Michael shot her a cold, withering look. Mother, you're too easily manipulated. That's just media hype. What is a few $1 million for a tiny startup, really? I sat down, holding my composure. Michael, my IPO is nearing. My colleagues are soon to be millionaires from their shares. What about your bank, brother? He slammed his palm down, his composure shattering. That's just a setback, I will fix it. You think a few million makes you great? My father intervened, his voice strained and authoritarian. That is enough. Michael, you are clearly stressed. Emily, you are too. This is a family, not a battlefield for assets. I looked at him, my heart aching. Dad, I never wanted assets. I only wanted to be seen as more than the child still looking for work. Mom placed her hand on mine, her eyes sharp with resolve as she looked at my father. Frank, don't you see? She accomplished something profound. We failed her by not believing. Michael sneered, his voice laced with pure venom. Mother, you are being emotionally manipulated. She always plays the victim card for sympathy and uses her sob story to divide this family. I turned to him, my voice colder than steel, hitting back with the facts he couldn't deny. You call saving thousands of lives playing the victim. When I stood up against Big Pharma while you were hiding toxic debt from your board. That is the real performance, Michael. The only one putting on a dangerous act here is you." The room plunged into silence. My father looked down at his plate. Mom squeezed my hand, and Michael, his face bright red, could only grind his teeth in defeated rage. Distant Aunt Martha. Michael's loyalist spoke up, her voice surprisingly soft and uncertain. "I think we owe Emily an apology. It is truly time to reassess our judgment." The table broke into a visible schism, silent, tense nods on one side, stony refusal on the other. Michael, utterly cornered, chose the only defense he had left: fury. He stood up, knocking his chair over with a jarring crash. "Fine. The whole family can choose sides. But when the merger succeeds, when I prove I'm the only winner, don't come back begging me for anything." He stormed out the door, leaving behind him a devastating, tangible silence. I remained seated, caught between two opposing gazes, my mother and a few relatives' eyes shining with fierce pride, and my father and the others still battling with their ingrained doubt. For the first time, I understood clearly my family was no longer a unified front. They had formally chosen their sides, and the true final battle was only just beginning. The silence that followed Uncle David's revelation haunted me long after that dinner. For years, every meal had ended with Michael basking in applause. But that night, his prestige was fractured, and for the first time, I wasn't the subject of ridicule. I was the subject of awe. But Michael wasn't the kind of man to accept humiliation quietly. It started subtly. Whispers appeared online, scattered across forums and comment sections. "Is MedTrack AI safe? Unregulated devices could harm seniors." Another startup bubble. At first I ignored them, but then the tone sharpened. Allegations of fraud. Rumors about falsified trial data. One morning, Olivia stormed into the office, her face pale. She dropped a printed article onto my desk. "Emily," she said, her voice shaking, "look at this." The headline screamed, "Health Tech Startup Faces Scrutiny Over Exaggerated Claims and Unsafe Practices." My stomach lurched. The article contained distortions of our research, cherry-picked numbers, twisted into a narrative of deception. It cited anonymous insiders claiming we exaggerated results and endangered patients. I skimmed to the bottom and froze. The journalist quoted a senior banking executive with close ties to the Carter family who claimed I had a history of reckless financial decisions and that her so-called innovation is a dangerous illusion. Michael. I clenched the paper in my fists. My own brother had fed lies to the press. The attacks escalated quickly. A week later, we received a subpoena. MedTrack AI was being investigated for consumer safety violations. It was a direct hit, perfectly timed to undermine the Forbes momentum. I met with our attorney, a sharp woman named Janice Nguyen. She slid the documents across her desk, adjusting her glasses. "Emily, they're coming at you hard. This isn't random, it's coordinated. I've seen Big Pharma use this playbook before. Smear campaigns, weaponized regulators, and strategic lawsuits to drain a startup's resources." "Michael," I whispered. Janice raised an eyebrow. "Your brother," I nodded, my jaw tight. "He's desperate. His bank is collapsing, his merger is dying, and Forbes put me on the cover. He can't stand it. He's aligning with them." Janice exhaled slowly. "That makes him dangerous. Family wars are the ugliest because they mix money with blood. You'll need more than evidence. You'll need allies willing to stand beside you publicly." Back at the office, Mark tried to calm the team. "We faced worse. Remember the garage? Remember the nights we thought the circuits would never work? This is just another trial." But I could see the unease in their eyes. Lawsuits weren't like burnt-out boards or software bugs. This was war on a level none of us had fought before. That evening, as the sun bled into the San Francisco skyline, my phone rang. Michael's name glowed on the screen. I considered ignoring it, but then I answered, my voice flat. "What do you want?" His tone dripped with smug satisfaction. "Just checking in, little sister. I hear your company's in hot water. Regulators, lawsuits, bad press, quite the trifecta. You must be exhausted." I gritted my teeth. "Why are you doing this, Michael?" "Because you don't belong in my world," he snapped. "You embarrassed me. You made me look small in front of the family. Do you think Forbes changes anything? You're not a CEO. You're a fraud who stumbled into luck. And I'm going to make sure the world sees that." His words burned, but beneath them I heard the tremor of desperation. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "And one day you'll choke on your own lies." I hung up before he could reply. The days that followed were chaos. News stations picked up the MedTrack AI a fraud angle. Investors grew skittish. One even called me directly, his voice tight with fear. "Emily, if you can't control the narrative, the IPO will evaporate." And yet, amid the noise, there were voices of truth. Patients began posting videos online, shaky smartphone clips of their pill boxes, their heartfelt stories. "This device saved my husband. Without MedTrack, I wouldn't be alive today." Those testimonies spread quietly like sparks in dry grass. Not as loud as the headlines, but powerful. Still, the weight pressed heavily. Every morning I woke up bracing for another blow. Then Janice called. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Emily, prepare yourself. Michael's not just whispering to the press anymore. He's filed a joint claim with PharmaCorp. He's accusing you of endangering elderly patients and misleading investors. It's going to court." My blood ran cold. Michael wasn't content to smear me in the media. He wanted to destroy me in front of the law, to strip everything away: my company, my credibility, my dignity. I stood at my office window watching the city lights flicker alive. For years, those lights had made me feel small, like a single insignificant speck. But tonight they reminded me of something else. Every speck together made a skyline. I wasn't alone. Behind me, Olivia spoke softly but firmly. "Emily, whatever happens, we'll testify. We'll show them the patients, the data, the truth. We won't let him win." Mark added, his voice steady. "Michael's betting on fear. You've built something on faith. That's stronger." I turned my chest tight with emotion. "Then we fight. All the way." But even as I spoke, I felt it. The storm was no longer brewing. It was here. Michael had chosen his battlefield, the courtroom. And I knew when the doors opened, it wouldn't just be me against Big Pharma. It would be me against my own brother. And this time, only one of us would walk away with the truth. Truth. And the truth always wins. The day the court announced the date for the hearing, I knew Michael had gone too far. He hadn't just used the press to sow doubt. He wanted to drag the entire legal system in to crush me completely. But he never suspected that I held the ultimate winning card. For months, we had meticulously archived every clinical trial record, every confirmed report, and every life saved by our device. Most importantly, the actual patients whose lives had been genuinely transformed by the pillbox. I knew that when the unassailable truth stood up, every one of his cynical lies would crumble. On the morning of the hearing, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Reporters jostled for space camera flashes flickering incessantly. Michael sat across the aisle, immaculate in his tailored suit, wearing a cold, calculated smile. He looked at me, his eyes communicating one message: "This is your end." I stood up, my hands clammy, but the narrative voice inside my head kept me steady. "No, this is his end." My lawyer opened his presentation, projecting our confirmed data onto the large courtroom screen. Charts and graphs appeared. Elderly patient adherence to medication increased by 72% after using MedTrack AI. 65% of users detected underlying health issues early due to AI alerts. A murmur rippled through the gallery. I stepped forward, my voice clear and ringing with conviction. "These are not merely numbers. These are people." The back doors opened quietly. One by one, our patients began to file in. The elderly gentleman who had sent the photo of himself hugging his granddaughter, the older woman who averted a serious health crisis due to an early alert, a tearful couple who approached the stand to express gratitude. Every eye in the room turned toward them. An older woman with trembling hands approached the witness stand. "If it hadn't been for that pillbox, I wouldn't be sitting here today. You can call it a trick if you like. To me, it is life itself." Michael clenched his jaw, his face tight. I saw beads of sweat forming on his temples. He had based his entire case on the premise that our product was a scam. The reality walking into the courtroom was devastating to his narrative. Then my lawyer dropped the final piece of evidence, a chain of leaked emails from the very bank where Michael was vice president. In the documents, senior executives openly acknowledged concealing the toxic debt to fast-track the merger before the stock market could react. The courtroom exploded. Reporters shouted, scrambling over chairs. Is First Capital Bank facing fraud charges? Is Michael Carter involved? Michael's face went white. He jumped up screaming, "That's a misunderstanding. I had no knowledge of that." But his protests were swallowed by the rising chaotic wave of noise. I stood tall, meeting his desperate gaze across the courtroom. You wanted the world to believe that I was a dreamer, that my company was a fragile bubble based on lies. But the truth is, your entire established career was the real illusion. And now it has burst. The cameras swung away from the judge and focused directly on Michael, a look of sheer defeated terror stripped of every shred of his former arrogance. Meanwhile, applause erupted from the cluster of patients standing firmly behind me. On that day, without a final verdict being read, the court of public opinion chose who they believed. Michael stumbled out of the courtroom, his hands shaking, swarmed by reporters demanding answers about the merger, the fraud, and the malicious lies directed at me. I watched him go, feeling no satisfaction, only a profound sense of peace. For the first time in my life, the scale had tipped completely. As I walked out, the camera flashes illuminated the hallway. A reporter yelled out, "Emily, do you have a message for your family, for your brother?" I stopped, inhaled deeply, and answered with quiet finality, my gaze meeting the lens of the nearest camera. "I don't need to prove anything anymore. I just needed everyone to see the..." After the hearing, life exploded. The media hailed MedTrack AI as the direct punchback against Big Pharma. Our stocks soared and the IPO succeeded beyond any projection. My employees, the loyal few who had bet on shares over salaries, became millionaires overnight. They embraced each other, tears streaming, and I knew we had changed the trajectory not just of a company but of individual lives. Yet that spectacular victory did not erase the memory of where it all began, the family dinner table, where I had been dismissed as the one still looking for work. One evening I returned to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, eyes red-rimmed. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "My daughter, I was wrong. I failed to see what you saw. I was only afraid. And I chose to believe what was easiest. But I am so incredibly proud of you." I nodded, my eyes warm. "I don't need your pride, Mom. I just needed your belief." My father stood behind her, silent. He had always been the most rigid. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. "Emily, I don't understand all this technology, but I see one thing: you accomplished something I never thought possible, and I apologize for not believing in you sooner." I smiled and stepped forward to embrace him. In that moment, the final weight I had carried vanished. Only Michael was absent. I heard he had resigned after the merger collapsed. The papers wrote about the freefall career of a once lauded banker. I felt no triumph. I only felt a quiet sadness. Beneath the layers of arrogance, Michael was still my brother. One afternoon, he surprised me with a call. His voice was hoarse. "Emily, I was wrong. I was too afraid to see you surpass me. I chose to ruin things rather than accept it, and I paid the price. But you are still my sister. Can we ever start over?" I paused, listening to the echoes of his past ridicule. But then I remembered the genuine connection we once shared. "I don't know," I replied slowly. "But if you are truly honest about this, then perhaps someday." I sighed and placed the phone down. Not every deep wound heals immediately, but at least the door to reconciliation was now ajar. A few months later, I hosted a celebration at the new MedTrack AI headquarters. The building was a modern tower in downtown San Francisco. But the feature I wanted to showcase wasn't the luxury office space. It was the entire wall dedicated to thousands of handwritten letters from elderly users, from their families, from doctors. Stories of lives prolonged and saved. I led my parents to stand before the wall. My father touched a letter, his gaze distant. This This is the most important part, isn't it? My daughter? I nodded. Yes, Dad. Not the money, not the fame. This is the truth. My entire immediate family stood silently before that wall of letters, and I knew that finally they had seen my path not as a mistake, but as a genuine calling. As the sun set, I stepped out onto the balcony. I recalled every humiliation every time I was made to feel small. I spoke softly, a final thought for those listening to this long story. If you have ever been dismissed or laughed at, remember this: your success isn't measured by proving others wrong. It's measured by the genuine good you bring to the world. That purpose is your highest form of vindication. I smiled, the wind sweeping my hair back. My story doesn't end here. It's just beginning. If you found your voice in this story, share it.
I used your kids' savings to buy my dream home. Amanda's voice rang through my phone speaker, dripping with smug satisfaction. They don't need college anyway. I mean, look how well I turned out without it. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, watching my 2 children through the kitchen window as they played in the backyard. 10-year-old Emma was helping her 7-year-old brother Lucas build what looked like a rocket ship out of cardboard boxes. Both of them were already dreaming about their futures. Emma wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Lucas talked about becoming a doctor. Interesting choice, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Oh, come on, Marie. Don't be so uptight, Amanda laughed. I saw an opportunity and I took it. The realtor said it was the last waterfront property available. I couldn't let it slip away just because you're hoarding all that money for some far-off future. My name is Marie Chen, and at 35, I just discovered my sister-in-law had somehow accessed the college fund accounts I've been building for my children since they were born. These weren't just savings accounts, they represented every extra shift I'd worked as a nurse, every bonus I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd made to ensure my kids would have the opportunities I never had. Besides, Amanda continued, clearly enjoying herself, I'm doing you a favor. Now you won't have to worry about all that boring college planning. The kids can just work their way up like I did. I mean, look at me, high school diploma, and now I'm about to own a mansion. What Amanda didn't know, what she hadn't bothered to find out before her little power play, was that I hadn't built those college funds alone. My late husband James had been equally committed to our children's future. Before his death 3 years ago in a car accident, he'd made sure there were ironclad protections in place. The movers are coming tomorrow, Amanda announced cheerfully. I can't wait to post photos of my new life. Maybe I'll let the kids visit sometimes, show them how their aunt lives in luxury while their mom penny pinches for some overpriced education. I watched Emma help Lucas attach wings to their cardboard rocket. They were so much like their father, creative, determined, always dreaming big. James would have been proud of them. He also would have been livid at his sister's betrayal. When did you make the transfer? I asked, my tone casual as I opened my laptop. Last week. Can you believe how fast everything moved? The realtor said it was the smoothest cash transaction she ever handled. Though honestly, those bank people were kind of weird about it. So many questions, but I handled it like a boss. I pulled up my email and quickly found what I was looking for. An alert from our family lawyer that I'd been saving for this exact moment. And you're moving in tomorrow? Yep. The truck's all loaded. I'm going to do a final walkthrough of the mansion this afternoon. 4,700 square feet, Marie. That's what real money can buy when you're not wasting it on books and lectures. I thought about the conversation I'd had with our lawyer 6 months ago, when he'd noticed some suspicious inquiries about the children's accounts. James had always said his sister was opportunistic, prone to taking shortcuts. He'd made sure to protect our children from exactly this kind of situation. Well, Amanda, I hope you didn't pack too much, I said, finally allowing a hint of steel to enter my voice. What's that supposed to mean? The smugness in her tone wavered slightly. Check your email, the one you used for the property purchase. It should have arrived about, I glanced at my watch, 5 minutes ago. The line went quiet except for the sound of Amanda's fingernails clicking on her phone screen. Then I heard her sharp intake of breath. This has to be a joke, she stammered. Property transfer void? Funds returned due to fraudulent access? What did you do? I didn't do anything, Amanda. James did. Years ago. Those college funds. They're in an educational trust. Any attempt to use them for non-educational purposes triggers automatic legal intervention. The money's already been returned to the trust accounts. But I already signed the papers. The house is mine. You signed papers using money you obtained fraudulently. The trust's lawyers have already contacted the real estate company. Check your next email. It should be from them, voiding the sale. You can't do this to me. Amanda's voice rose to a shriek. I already told everyone about my new house. I posted it on Instagram. Then I guess you'll have to post an update, I replied calmly. Maybe something about the importance of reading legal documents before trying to steal from your niece and nephew. Mom, Emma called from the backyard. Come look at our rocket. We made room for all our books when we go to Mars University. I have to go, I told Amanda. My future aerospace engineer needs me. This isn't over, Amanda hissed. I'll find a way to fight this. You can't just. I ended the call and stepped out into the backyard. Emma and Lucas had painted stars all over their cardboard rocket, and a carefully lettered sign read, Mars University Express. It's perfect, I said, hugging them both. Your dad would have loved it. My phone kept buzzing with incoming texts from Amanda, each one more desperate than the last. I silenced it without reading them. The trust's lawyers would handle everything. James had made sure of that. Our children's future was secure, protected by a father's love and foresight, even if he couldn't be here to see it himself. As I helped Emma and Lucas find more boxes to build their space university, I couldn't help but smile. Amanda had always underestimated our family, always thought she could outsmart everyone else. But she'd never understood what James and I knew from the start, that the best investments aren't in mansions or luxury, but in the dreams we build for our children. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Amanda wouldn't give up easily, she never did. But for now, I was content watching my children reach for the stars, knowing their father had made sure nothing could hold them back. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and a flood of text messages from both Amanda and my mother-in-law, Patricia. I was making breakfast for the kids when the doorbell rang, its cheerful chime somehow managing to sound angry. Mom? Emma looked up from her cereal. Is that Aunt Amanda? She keeps posting weird stuff on Facebook about us. I squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. Finish your breakfast, sweetie. I'll handle this. Sure enough, Amanda stood on my porch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her perfectly styled hair now a mess. Behind her, Patricia's Mercedes was parked crookedly in my driveway. How dare you humiliate your sister like this? Patricia burst out before I could even speak. Do you know how embarrassing it was for her to explain to the realtor that the sale fell through? I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway. More or less embarrassing than stealing from her niece and nephew's college fund. She didn't steal anything. Patricia snapped. She was simply redistributing family resources. Those children don't need 2 massive college funds. It's excessive. 2? I hadn't meant to engage, but curiosity got the better of me. Amanda's face flushed. Well, since you're being so difficult about the first account, I thought I'd try the backup fund James mentioned before he died. But those stuck-up lawyers won't even tell me where it is. I felt a surge of gratitude for my late husband's foresight. James had always said his sister would try something like this one day. The second fund was locked away even more securely, a surprise for the kids' graduation day. You need to fix this, Amanda demanded. Call off the lawyers. Tell them I had permission to use the money. That's not happening, I replied firmly. Those funds are for the children's education. Nothing else. Education. Patricia threw her hands up. James would have wanted his sister to have a beautiful home. Family comes first. Yes, I agreed quietly. Family does come first. That's why James set up those trusts, to protect his children's future. Oh please, Amanda scoffed. James was just being controlling, like always. He knew I was better with money than him. I could have turned those college funds into a real estate empire. I heard small footsteps behind me and turned to see Lucas in the doorway. His space robot pajamas rumpled from sleep. Daddy wasn't controlling, he said, his young voice firm. He was smart, he told me so. Amanda's expression softened into something calculating. Oh, sweetie, she cooed, don't you want your Auntie Amanda to have a nice house where you can come visit? We could have a pool, and... No, Emma appeared beside her brother, her face a mirror of James's when he was angry. Those are our space university funds, Dad promised. Patricia stepped forward, her designer purse swinging. Now, children, you don't understand adult matters. Sometimes plans need to change. Your aunt needs. I think we're done here, I interrupted, ushering my children back inside. The trust lawyers will be in touch about the attempted fraud. I suggest you both leave before they add harassment to the list of charges. Fraud? Amanda's face went pale. You wouldn't dare. I'm family. Exactly, I replied. Your family. You tried to steal from your own niece and nephew. Think about that. I closed the door on their protests and turned to find both children watching me. Emma's face was thoughtful, while Lucas clutched his favorite book about space doctors. Mom, Emma asked, is Aunt Amanda going to jail? I sat down on the stairs, patting the space beside me. They both curled up close, seeking reassurance. No, honey. But she did something wrong, and there are consequences for that. Like when I took an extra cookie and had to skip dessert. Lucas asked. Something like that, I smiled, ruffling his hair. But much bigger. Through the window, I could see Amanda and Patricia still arguing in the driveway. My phone buzzed with a text from the trust's lawyer. FYI, she's now trying to claim verbal permission from James. We have his recorded statements specifically prohibiting this. Do you want to proceed with charges? I thought about James, about all our late-night conversations planning for our children's future. He'd known his family well, their patterns, their sense of entitlement. The trusts weren't just about money. They were about protecting our children from exactly this kind of manipulation. Did Dad know Aunt Amanda would do this? Emma asked, always perceptive. He suspected she might try, I admitted. That's why he worked so hard to protect your future. Like a superhero, Lucas exclaimed. A secret superhero who saves college. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I watched Patricia's Mercedes pull away, Amanda in the passenger seat. My phone immediately lit up with a message from Patricia. This isn't over. Family meeting tonight at our house. Be there or else. I replied with a simple no thank you and blocked both their numbers. The trust lawyers had been clear. All communication should go through them now. Emma leaned against me, her voice quiet. Mom, are we still going to be able to go to college? Absolutely, I assured her. Your dad made sure of that. No one can touch those funds except for your education. And Mars University? Lucas asked anxiously. If you get accepted to Mars University, the funds will be there, I promised, hugging them both. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat in James' old office, looking through the family photos he kept on his desk. There was one of Amanda at his college graduation, looking bored and resentful. She dropped out after one semester, claiming college was a waste of time. James had tried to help her over the years, offering to pay for her to go back to school. But she always wanted quick fixes, easy money. My phone lit up with an email from the trust's lawyer, updating me on the situation. Amanda's failed attempt to access the funds had triggered an investigation into her other financial dealings. The preliminary findings weren't pretty: unpaid taxes, questionable loans, a pattern of manipulating family members for money. Your husband was right, the lawyer wrote. She would have burned through those college funds in months. The protections he put in place worked exactly as intended. The kid's future is secure. I picked up my favorite photo of James with the children, taken at Emma's 7th birthday. He was helping her build a model rocket, while Lucas, just 4 at the time, watched in awe. James had always said our children could reach any height, achieve any dream, as long as we gave them a strong foundation to build on. Amanda and Patricia might never understand that. To them, money was about immediate gratification, about status and showing off. They couldn't see that James' real legacy wasn't about dollars in an account. It was about believing in our children's potential, about giving them the tools to build their own futures. Outside, the night was clear, stars twinkling above our modest home. Somewhere up there, past all those stars, was Mars, where Emma dreamed of building cities and Lucas dreamed of healing space explorers. Their father had made sure those dreams had a chance to grow, protected from those who couldn't see beyond their own desires. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Patricia's or else threat would materialize in some form, and Amanda wouldn't give up easily. But tonight, I was grateful for James's wisdom, for his love that reached beyond time to protect our children's dreams. 3 months after Amanda's failed attempt to steal the college funds, I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing the final settlement agreement. The investigation into Amanda's finances had revealed even more than we'd expected. She'd been forging Patricia's signature on loans, convincing distant relatives to invest in non-existent businesses, and running up massive debts in pursuit of her luxury lifestyle. The trust protections didn't just save your children's education, Mr. Sullivan explained, sliding the papers across his desk. They expose years of financial fraud. Several other family members have come forward about money she took from them. I thought about the family meeting Patricia had tried to force. It had happened without me, turning into a shouting match when other relatives realized the extent of Amanda's deceptions. My brother-in-law Tom called afterward, apologizing for doubting me. James always said she was dangerous with money, he admitted. I should have listened. The settlement was straightforward. Amanda would repay her victims over time, attend financial counseling, and most importantly, have no access to any family funds in the future. Patricia, faced with evidence of her daughter's actions, had finally stopped enabling her. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma's teacher. Space project presentation today. Emma's rocket design is incredible. I smiled, remembering the cardboard prototype still standing in our garage. Emma had upgraded it with real calculations about fuel efficiency and atmospheric drag. Lucas had contributed by designing a space hospital inside, complete with zero-gravity operating rooms. One more thing, Mr. Sullivan said as I signed the papers. We found this in James's old files. He asked that it be given to you if Amanda ever tried to access the trusts. He handed me an envelope sealed with James's familiar scrawl across the front. For Marie, when Amanda shows her true colors. Inside was a letter, written in James's warm, thoughtful style. My dear Marie, if you're reading this, it means Amanda finally tried to take what isn't hers. I'm sorry you had to deal with this, but I never doubted you'd protect our children's future. Amanda always thought I was too cautious, too focused on planning ahead. She never understood that true wealth isn't about mansions or status. It's about giving our children wings to fly and roots to come home to. The second trust fund I set up, it's not just for college. I've arranged for it to cover any educational dream our children pursue, whether it's Emma building rockets or Lucas healing people among the stars. They can reach for anything, knowing they have a foundation to build on. Tell them their daddy believed in their dreams, even the ones that seem as distant as Mars. All my love, James. That evening, I watched Emma present her rocket design to her class. She stood tall, explaining thrust vectors and orbital mechanics with the same passion James had shown for building things. Lucas sat in the front row, bursting with pride at his big sister's work. And this, Emma concluded, pointing to her diagram, is how we'll get to Mars University. The class erupted in applause. Her teacher pulled me aside afterward. She's got a real gift for engineering, and such determination. She gets that from her father, I said softly. At home, I found a final email from Patricia waiting. I was wrong. James knew exactly what he was doing, protecting them from us. I'm sorry. I tucked James's letter into the family album, next to the photo of him building rockets with Emma. Amanda's betrayal had hurt, but it had also proved something important. That love, wisdom, and careful planning could protect dreams across time through any storm. The kids were in the backyard, upgrading their cardboard rocket with solar panels made from aluminum foil. Their dreams were safe, their future secure, protected by a father who'd seen clearly and planned wisely. Mom, Lucas called. We made room for a whole medical library in the rocket. Want to see? I stepped outside into the warm evening air. Above us, Mars glowed red against the darkening sky. Distant, but not impossible. Just like James had always said. Show me everything, I replied, ready to dream with them.